Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel and welcome back to another round with Basis Picks. As always, please like and subscribe, share with a friend, a colleague, a relative, an associate, an enemy, any and all in between. It's appreciated. Now, this is actually the second time I've done this intro because prior to this, I gave a take on Ezra Taylor against Louis Edmondson, only to just watch the press conference and find out that Louis Edmondson is out, apparently through flu or some kind of injury, and Steve Woodall is now in his place as a last-minute replacement. I'm not even going to bother predict that fight. Whatever happens, happens. Without further ado, this has now just become Basis Pick, but yeah, main event time, so let's get into the pick. So, Joseph Parker against Fabio Wardley, fellow Capricorn, against War, the guy from Ipswich, the what they call him, the tractor bomber. I think he was talking about that as a name. I don't know if that's stuck yet, or the Ipswich Deontay Wilder. Look, this fight it's one of those fights that it's hard to sort of visualize how it's going to play out from a stylistic point of view, because there's a lot of anomalies in there. What I will say is that in 3 of Fabio Wardley's last 4 fights, he has been hit a lot. He's obviously taken the shots, taken them well, but he's been hit, he's been opened up and hurt due to like the cuts on the face and bumps and bruises or whatnot. His defense hasn't seemed to have gotten much better. The things that he does to try and avoid punches, very dangerous, especially like his version of the pull counter. He does like those punches to basically to touch him so that he knows that that person's in range as he then tries to fire back. He does back out in straight lines. He very rarely angles off to the side or uses lateral movement. It's normally always backwards movement. And I think part of that is to make sure that when he comes straight back, he can leverage as much power as he wants onto the shots. But his defense isn't great. He takes a lot of shots, but he manages to give a lot of shots, and he always seems to take the guys out when it matters the most. If you look at the first Clark fight and the Hooney fight, he was getting comprehensively outboxed in both of them. Admittedly, he had a lot more success against Clark in the first fight than he did in the Hooney fight. And while I'm not gonna ultimately say it was a lucky punch as to how he ended up winning the fight, but it was fortuitous the way that ended up occurring, and then even more fortuitous at the speed at which the referee decided to initiate the 10 count and wave the fight off, even though Justice Hooney was on his feet at 7. So look, yeah, it's one of those fights where basically all the pressure is on Joseph Parker. He's got everything to lose, nothing to gain. Fabio Wardley, even though he does have an interim version of the WBA title at the moment, his interim title is for the regular. So it's not for the super title, it's not for the one that can be unified, it's not for the one that actually counts, it's for the one that is currently held by Kubrat Pulev. Which means that you'd have to ultimately go through that fight first in order to be able to do a consolidation, unless Frank Warren can maybe pull some strings, which we all know that Frank is capable of doing. But the WBA is also the second to last in the rotation at the moment. It's WBO, WBC, WBA, then the IBF, as that was the last one that was recently fought for. So he's got a long way to wait outside of this fight. And because he's the white collar background and all that stuff, ultimately everyone's just saying, well, it's a hide into nothing. If you lose this fight, you've still got plenty of time to keep growing, to keep sort of building on your experience, and you can come again. You're still young, you're 30 years old, like it might take you until you're 33, 34, but you can get back into position when you're in your proper prime and you've learned all you're going to learn. Whereas Joseph Parker, 33, going to be 34 in January. He's already been champion once. He's waited a little while for his title shot. If he loses this fight, the chances of him getting himself back into a mandatory position, unless he fights until he's like 38, 39, 40, is going to be unlikely, especially as he's not the quote-unquote ticket seller that they want to see. So therefore, it means that they're not going to be rushing to put him back into mandatory positions, and he's going to have to end up fighting like the murderer's row in order to get into those positions. So he's got everything to lose. That being said, he is vastly more experienced than Fabio Wardley, and in most instances this should be viewed as kind of nothing more than a tune-up for Joseph Parker. But the power of Wardley and the unorthodox nature of the way that sometimes he will throw his punches and the angles the punches come from will definitely have a bearing on this fight, especially in the first half. Now, for me, Fabio Wardley, his best chance to win this fight is in the first 5 rounds. Now, Joseph Parker has never been knocked out in the first part of a fight. I mean, we got the knockdown against Dillian Whyte in the first round of their bout, but obviously that was a head clash. It wasn't actually a punch that landed which caused that. And then he was woozy all the way through, then got knocked down in the 7th. Against Zhang, I think he was knocked down in, I believe it was the 3rd, maybe it was the 3rd round and the 7th round, or the 5th and the 7th, I can't quite remember on that one. But he obviously got knocked down twice in that, or was it the 3rd and the 5th? Either way, he got knocked down twice early in there, but got back up, composed himself and managed to get through the rounds. Now, while Fabio is a more savage finisher if he's got you hurt, I definitely can see instances where him trying to go for the kill will leave a lot of openings for him to get countered and hurt himself. If we look at the fight with Frazer Clark, the second fight, when he did the pull down with the arm and came over with the right hand that knocked Frazer into the ropes, you saw Fabio get wild. But he threw like a lot of shots to the body. He tried to throw some shots to the head, but he was throwing shots with basically both of his arms down by his waist, ripping shots down to the body, which ended up getting him countered with one shot by Frazer Clark over the top. And when he was throwing the other shots, he wasn't keeping the phone at home with the left side when he threw the right. He basically just winged his entire body into the shot. If you look at the way that he knocked out Justice Hooney when he knocked him down, he dipped off to the side and threw the shot. But this arm, which is the arm that should be defending that side of you, was down by his waist. So whenever he does throw these shots and gets wicked and wild, he becomes very defensively unresponsible and defensively lapsed. And if Joseph Parker gets knocked down and does have a clear mind at that point in time, he'll be able to see that this guy is not throwing shots responsibly. And while that killer instinct is good at the lower levels, you will get yourself caught and clipped at the upper levels when the guy, especially if the guy's a good counter puncher or backs themselves to throw when you throw. Joseph Parker has done that in the past. Sometimes he will try to just let the head clear. He might dip onto the body, hold, push back, just try to get a breath and then sort of go again, slow the momentum down. But in those moments, I can definitely see a scenario where he goes, okay, cool, let's actually trade, because I'm going to be more responsible with my shot than you're going to be. The jab is going to be an interesting and a key part in this fight, and I can definitely see Parker doing a lot more level changes than Fabio Wardley, especially early on. I feel like he's going to try to maintain the range and the distance at a distance that he's happy with. Given the fact that Fabio Wardley is not a very high volume puncher, I don't think Joseph Parker is going to have to worry about having to work at a pace he's not comfortable with, because Fabio does look for a jab 1-2 kind of scenario, maybe a hook to the body, overhand right up top. Like he throws all of his shots like pretty much mean spirited, but he doesn't throw in combinations. He doesn't throw to just make you work and to make you, you know, counter. Everything he's throwing, he's basically throwing to try and close the show. That's part of the reason why his gas tank always seems like it's struggling by the time he gets to sort of round 4 or 5 in a fight. But he's got good powers of recovery in the sense that even when he's dirt tired, he still manages to find energy from somewhere to carry on. His output becomes even less, but almost the weight that he throws behind each shot becomes increased, as he's like, well, I can't throw as much as I was throwing before, so I'm just going to throw everything I can behind this one and then take some time to recover, and then I'll throw another big shot. And that's kind of the way that he seems to operate in those moments. Him doing that with Joseph Parker, someone that, you know, is a lot more aggressive now than he was, but is still very much a safety first type fighter, in terms of he's not trying to just get hit for the sake of getting hit. He's not going to give Fabio a lot of those same opportunities. And, you know, obviously Fabio caught Justice Hooney coming in, you know, off of a hop where he decided to try, and he decided to lead off with the backhand, which is something that he didn't do in that entire fight up until that moment. Whereas I don't think, and that was just, you know, that was basically naivety on Justice Hooney's part. That was just him switching off and not being responsible for one moment. Joseph Parker will be responsible throughout the entire fight. He's not going to try and force a stoppage, and he's not going to go for a stoppage unless he is 100% sure that Fabio is out on his feet and can't defend himself. If he thinks there's any semblance that Fabio can get a counter shot off, he's gonna back down, and he's gonna try and feint him to see how he reacts to the feint before he goes for the next one, which might give Fabio a bit of opportunity to recover, but it will also stop that moment where you had the best opportunity to get the KO. So Fabio has to start fast, and he has to basically treat this fight like it's 5 or 6 rounds. He can't just rely on the Deontay Wilder, I only need one punch, and once I get that one punch, like, you know, basically you either go down or you know, you're in big trouble, and when I've got you hurt, you stay hurt and I finish you. I don't think he can rely on that later on in the fight, because Parker seems to be able to manage his reserves a lot better, apart from obviously that time with Joyce when he said he was ill. But outside of that, Joyce made him work for every second of every minute of every round up until the 11th. And I still maintain that even though he got knocked down and knocked out badly by Joe Joyce, he still beat the referee's count on his feet. Just the referee felt he was no fit state to continue the fight. So what happens if Fabio gets the knockdown, but he gets up? Maybe he gets a second knockdown somewhere, but he gets up and he can't get rid of him. How does he react? I feel like he's got a will that is basically what allows him to be able to do what he's done in the game so far. But there are people that can potentially break that will if what you've been doing all of a sudden doesn't work, and you aren't necessarily skilled enough to have the plan B, C or D to just get through the rest of the fight. He's never gone 12 rounds. He's gone 12 rounds once, and that was the second Frazier Clark fight. Other than that, he's not used to being high, you know, sort of a high gas tank and having to sort of go those rounds. Joseph Parker has done the 10s and the 12s quite consistently. Like, he knows what it takes. Plus he's packed on good size for himself, where he hasn't lost a lot of his speed, but he's probably able to absorb slightly better, and he's got him punching a little bit harder as well because he's been working on his mechanics. So look, I've said all of that to say I do think that Fabio Wardley will have some moments in the fight early on. He will definitely have success. He will probably win a couple of those early rounds. Of the first 5, I definitely feel like he'll win 2 or 3 of them, and probably one of those will be a very conclusive round. But as it gets to round 6, round 7, round 8, as he starts to sort of fade a bit, and Parker's obviously still been doing his work and been credible and landing his shots against Wardley, especially with the nose, which we know the nose is going to go, the blood's going to pour, and possibly that could end up hampering the breathing. Fabio's going to have to breathe through his mouth a little bit more, which is going to make him a bit more susceptible, maybe slightly a half a second slower. In those moments when Parker decides to ramp up the aggression, which he started to do more frequently, I can see Wardley unfortunately wilting under that pressure. You won't knock Wardley down and he stays down and like he decides to sit out a count, but I can see a scenario about between rounds 9 and 11, where he gets hit, he gets hurt, he gets knocked down, he gets back up, but he's on wobbly legs. Joseph Parker maybe goes in for the finish. He might even knock him down again, or it's looking a bit ropey. Ben Davison will likely throw in the towel before the ref even jumps in to stop the fight, because Fabio will probably still be swinging back sporadically, but ultimately when you see the end of the scenario, it will end up being probably Ben Davison deciding that caution is better, throwing in the towel, referee jumping in, and Joseph Parker getting a late ref stoppage. So I see that happening between rounds 9 to 11. So that is my prediction. Joseph Parker winning via TKO referee stoppage between the 9th and the 11th round. Leave your comments down below. Let me know what you guys think on this one, and also let me know if you're actually going to buy the pay-per-view and be watching it live. I know that October Red will be doing a live watch along, so as I'm not going to be doing one, please jump over to her channel and make sure that you go and support her, and we'll definitely talk about it on Fight Talk Live on the weekend. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share and hype the videos. But for right now, Spaces Picks locked.